let's talk about when you install SQL Server. I don't know if y'all looked and poked around. Um, oh, good. All right, so we still got lots of folks. I don't know if you looked and poked around, but you should. All right, so you installed SQL, and hopefully, when you go to Management Studio, which is the end-all tool for administering and using SQL Server. There's other tools, but this is the main one, SQL Server Management Studio. And it'll ask you to connect to your SQL instance. And then this sort of thing comes up. This is your Object Explorer. And like I said, hopefully you poked around and you look to see, of course you're not going to have this many databases, but you will have system databases. And security, server objects. If you chose replication, that would be here. If you're using the Express Edition, you won't have that. Always on high availability, that's only with Enterprise and Developer Editions. But everybody gets management and a SQL Server agent. Maybe not with Express, but Standard and Enterprise, okay. Everybody gets an agent. So what are these things here? So system databases. These are the databases that help run the system itself, and the SQL has to have them in order to work properly. So we're going to talk about the system databases, what they do, why they're there, some of the structure of what is a database file, what's a log file, and things like that. So the 4 system databases are master, model, tempdb, and MSDB. The master database is just kind of like it sounds, master puppets, Metallica. He is the god, if you will, of the SQL instance. He holds the master plans, system tables. He has the security information. He holds the users and their different permissions. He keeps track of where the files are located on the file system for each database. He keeps track of their names, all the indexes, all the objects that are created in SQL Server, and everything is an object. So a database is an object, a table in a database is an object, a store procedure is an object, a view, everything is considered an object. So he keeps track of where all those things are, like which indexes are associated with what tables in what database. So all that's there is absolutely critical to the system. SQL can't run without it. You need to back it up regularly. Okay, it's very small database, tiny. TempDB. So this database is your scratch pad. It is just like it sounds, temporary stuff. When you create a temporary table in SQL, which you can do, why would someone do that? Let's say that you are writing a query. Maybe you want to pull back all the users that have accounts in the system, and you want to kind of set that information aside, and then you want to do some really complicated grouping and sorting and stuff like that. So you could write your query that joins a bunch of tables and create a temporary table of the output of that, and then you can write queries against that temporary table. It's just one use of it. TempDB also is used if we're sorting data that is in queries and store procedures, and we run out of memory to hold those results of that sorting, then we will spill over to TempDB so that everything doesn't just stop. It will still happen. It'll just spill over to TempDB, and those are temporary. Yes.
For only the value is going to spill over, only the memory is out of, right, while doing the sorting, or all the sorting is going to be memory in TempDB.
So when you submit a query to SQL and it's got order by whatever, it should allot an amount of memory that it thinks it will need to do the query and the sorting. But if for some reason your cardinality estimation was off, or it didn't give enough memory to the query to run and hold it all in memory, it will spill over to TempDB.
Right. So any other system database related, uh, any for the TempDB, any other than user database, any other system database are using this TempDB, like master or model or MSDB?
Well, master's probably not going to use TempDB. Maybe, I mean, because we don't run our queries, we don't write store procedures and store them in master. It's going to be mostly your user databases that access it, but everything on this instance. So if you have one database or you have 100 databases for this instance of SQL, they all use just one TempDB.
Okay, so whenever I'm that case, if in case of TempDB is not accessible, right, the database is, I mean, the SQL instance not coming online. So what I'm speculating, if it is whenever the SQL is starting, some process running began related the system databases related to some process and go back and checking on TempDB, and somehow it is using TempDB. I thought that's what my thought. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
Well, TempDB has to exist for SQL to run. So SQL won't come up if TempDB is not able to create. So it's one of the things SQL does when it starts up is if TempDB is not there, like if the MDF and the LDF files are gone, it will create them. And if it's not able to do that, it won't come up.
So who giving the instruction? Which whether it is coming from model database or which process is verifying that? I just
Well,
want to understand it.
so when SQL starts up, if TempDB isn't there, like the MDF and LDF, then it's going to use the model database as its template to create TempDB. So they're kind of interrelated. If model doesn't exist, if it's corrupt or somehow went missing, then it won't be able to create TempDB because model's not there for it to use as a template. Therefore, SQL won't come up.
Okay. So my final conclusion, the final conclusion going to be the system databases is not going to use TempDB for anything kind of storing values or something, right?
I hate to say never.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it seems unlikely, but you know, as sure as I say no, then there'll be something. Somebody will come along and say, "Oh, but it does." Blah 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 blah. Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head, but it's possible, sure.
Okay. Thanks.
Uh-huh. So, because temporary or TempDB is temporary, we don't need to back it up, okay? And like I said, if for some reason something horrible happens to it, you know, you shut down SQL and somebody comes along and deletes the MDF and LDF file, that's okay. SQL will recreate it when it starts up. I know I'm talking about this MDF and LDF file. We'll get to that, but when a database is created, there is a minimum of 2 files that is created for every database, and one is a MDF file, which is the main database file, and the other is the LDF. This is the file extension, and that is the transaction log file. So all databases get at least 2 files an MDF and an LDF. So in TempDB, we say that this is a place where we hold or store temporary tables. There's two kinds of temporary tables. There's private temporary tables, and you would indicate that by putting only one pound sign or hash key in front of the name. So in SQL language, the syntax would be create table, table name, right? If I just don't put a hash or anything in front of it, then it's going to create a regular table in my user database. If I preface it with one pound sign, then it's going to create a private temporary table in the temporary database. Only the connection that created the table can access the table. So we're getting into a little bit of a security thing here. So when that connection drops or is done, then the temporary table will go away, all right, automatically. Sometimes not as fast as you might think, but yes, it will drop. Global temporary tables you indicate by putting two pound signs or hash in front of the name. So you'd say create table pound Stacy table. And that's global. That means any connection can subsequently access the table. So all connections can use that temporary table, and it's going to exist until the connection that created the table terminates, and all the current users or current uses of the table complete. So it could stay there indefinitely if things are constantly referring to it, different connections. Model. The model database, like I said, it's a template. So it's needed for SQL to create the temporary TempDB. It's needed for every database you create. So it's got to have something to start with, right? It's got to have some place to put the files. It's just something to start with. You can change the model database so that all subsequent databases that are created use the new values. This is useful in big enterprise environments when you have a certain standard of configuration for your databases, for where the files are stored on different storage and stuff like that. So it is critical. If you don't have it, SQL won't start. One thing that's nice about model is you can grab the model database from any SQL server that is the same version and just copy, paste, boom, SQL will come up. You can also grab a model database from an older SQL version and pop it in there, and it should still come up. It'll upgrade, pretty sure. The last system database is MSDB. So this is the historian. This is associated with the SQL Server agent. So all the backups, your restores, the last time you did a restore, the last time you did a backup, all that information is stored in the MSDB database. Also, it holds all the agent information, like all the different jobs, the schedule, the steps, the history, whether the job errored or was successful, what time it ran, all of that is stored in MSDB. So every database, I mentioned this before, has at least two operating system files, a data file and a log file. You can have more than one data file. You can have a whole bunch of data files. There are times when having multiple data files is better for performance. Also just good for organizing things. If you want to do like file group backups, it can be used for that, different file groups. However, with the transaction log files, it really is of no benefit to have more than one transaction log file. If you have more than one, it can actually hinder performance, especially when it comes to doing restores and things like that. So just have one transaction log file and however many data files you might need. Most people just have one. With the SQL Server databases, if I come out here and I look at my master database, for example, and I go to Properties, see, it's going to be Options. If I look here, I see this compatibility level, and this one is set to 110 or SQL Server 2012. Each version of SQL, this changes. Now, if I have a database on here that's 2012, and let's say I do an upgrade of SQL, and I upgrade to 2014, the compatibility level for the pre-existing databases is going to stay at 2012. If I want it to be 2014 compatibility level, I have to come in here and manually change it. Why do I care? What does this do? Well, in 2014, we did a rewrite of the cardinality estimator for the query engine, so optimizer. So if you don't want the fixes or the rewrite of CE for 2014, then you leave your compatibility level of the database at 2012. And you won't use the new rewrite of it. However, if you do want it, then you would come out here and you would adjust it to 2014. That will change the cardinality estimation for the whole database. So that's one example. It does not mean, however, if I leave my compatibility level at 2012, but I've upgraded my whole system to 2014, my database is a 2014 database. It doesn't mean I can, back up the database now and restore it on a 2012 server. It won't work. It only has to do with the features and, like the new features and stuff like that associated with a version of SQL, and it's configurable at the database level. Okay, bye-bye. Let's see, what else on our PowerPoint? Okay, there's different ways to install SQL. So like on my laptop and your computer, more than likely, if we come out here and we look at the file system, program files, Microsoft SQL Server, and each one of these is an instance of SQL. Okay, notice they have their individual folders, okay, because you can have many different versions of SQL running on the same box. So this is my 2012 instance. I come out here and open up the data folder, and both my MDFs and my LDFs are on the same drive in the same folder. In a production environment out there in the real world, this is not a good idea. Okay, this is very bad. It's a major performance issue. Okay, you want to separate your MDF files from your LDF files. So that's what this slide is all about. Ignore the fact that this says 2008. It's still applicable. Okay, doesn't matter. You should have the operating system and the SQL operating system, if you will, the SQL binaries on a drive. And that's separate from the drive that you have your system databases on, master model MSDB. In really large environments, you need to have your tempDB separated from the other system databases, and it needs to have its own drive. Then for your user databases, you've got a drive for the MDF files and you've got a drive for the LDF files. Now this is kind of old here because I'm talking about RAID 5 and RAID 10. Hey, those systems are still out there. For a SAN, it looks a little bit different, but the idea is the same. You want to have the LDF and the MDFs on different drives. Okay, yes. So in SQL, we looked at these are the files. Each one, let's do it by name. So this is this database name, and it's MDF and LDF. Here's another database clone, DB, MDF, and LDF. So it's not, that's it. It's pretty exciting. Looking at databases inside, so if I go to properties of this database, for example, I will see here, and this is what master keeps track of, right? This is the logical name for the database file. This is where it's located, the path. This is the file name for this database. I only have one file group. I could have many, but I only have one. It's what's by default. And all of my files are in this one primary file group. Options, we already talked about compatibility level, but other things are the recovery model. And then there's all these things, and each one of these things causes SQL to do different stuff, right? Most of the time, the default is plenty good enough for everything. However, for SharePoint, this auto update statistics, we turn that off. Yes. This is at the database level. Okay. There's other features and settings we set at the server level, but this is for just this database. Permissions. I'm not going to get into these things right now. General, this tells me the status, so if there was an issue, it would say something like suspect or in recovery or recovery pending. So this is the status of the database, the owner of the database, usually the one that created it, the size, and how much space is available. So with a SQL database, I have room in here. So I go look at the disk, the size on the disk is going to include this space available. Think of it like a container. So I can create a database. We'll just make one. Let's make it 50. Okay. Now, that was fast. Stacy, awesome. 55 megabytes. Space available, 47.77 megabytes. If I come out here and I look on the disk, (51,200), 5120 KB. Is there data in here? No. I haven't put any data in here. But it is cornered off, or it's already grabbed this disk space. It's reserved this spot on the disk, okay? And I can put data in it and take data out, and this size on the disk is not going to change. Until it gets to a point where, as I am, creating tables and doing transactions and importing data, if it gets to a point where SQL is reached 50 megabytes. SQL is smart enough to know, hey, if I post this next transaction or if I insert these records, I'm going to fill up. I'm going to run out of disk space. Even though when we think of disk space, we think of this right here. Okay, how much space do I have left? That's not what SQL is looking at. SQL is looking at how big is my container that I've been allotted, that I've been reserved for me. So that's the amount that he can use. Well, back in SQL 2000, I think it was, they added the feature of auto growth. So that when SQL knows, hey, if I post this thing, I'm going to fill up, what it will do is it will go ahead and auto grow or grab 1 more megabyte of file space and add it to the size of the database. And this is great. This is awesome. It keeps things processing. It prevents it from coming to a screaming halt and you have to go find a new job. No, this is good that it auto grows. However, what isn't good is to leave this set at 1 megabyte when your database is 500 gig. Can you imagine if it has to auto grow all the time by 1 megabyte, what that might do? Any thoughts on that? You might see that be a problem?
Yes, problem. You'll get fragmentation and also you'll get slowness.
Why does it get slowness?
Whenever getting growing, right? It is kind of a resource intention.
Yes.
Whenever it try to grow, it will CP go high. And also whenever it's growing, right, it gets kind of fragmented. Each and every time it is growing, right, you'll get, for example, if you have the database having some indexes, you get fragmented also. Basically, we have two kind of file system. One is physical files, and also the other one is index. If we talk about index, we have internal, external. Whenever growing files, we are not possible to capture in the file level fragmentations. In order to capture that, we need to go for an index level. So this is what my understanding. If anything new, please add me.
Right. So we don't know when it goes to grab that 1 megabyte of disk space. Is it going to be in a continuous space on the disk? Probably not. It's going to be somewhere else. Now, if it's a SAN, that doesn't impact as much, but you can introduce file fragmentation. Plus, it is resource intensive. So a better idea is to not use autogrow for your capacity planning. A better plan is to, twice a year or something, you are pulling up the database and looking at it and seeing how much free space you have. And you're adjusting this manually during a change window or during a time when the system is not being hammered by heavy load of users using it. You're going to do it in the middle of the night or whatever. And so you change this to 55. Okay. And now I've just increased the size of my database, but I did it on my terms. I did it when I wanted to, when the system was slow, and not payday Friday, in the middle of the day. That would be bad. And it always auto grows at the wrong time. It's always a bad time. So auto grow is there for emergencies only. Another bad consequence of letting auto grow be your capacity plan is that, especially if you leave it at 1 megabyte and you auto grow a bunch, several times, many times, and you're not paying attention, it will slow down the recovery time of a database. So when you start up SQL, it's going to take freaking forever for it to go through all these virtual log files that AutoGrow creates in your transaction log, and it takes a long time to recover. We get cases all the time of customers calling in because they rebooted SQL and 2 hours later their databases are still not online. We have to do stuff to get rid of the virtual log files so that recovery will happen sooner. and it's just a big mess. So
So if
yes.
we get rid of virtual log file, will you end up with lose any data or something?
No, you don't lose data, but the way you have to work around it is you have to shrink the transaction log down pretty small, and then manually go through and grow it in increments that are more efficient and fewer in number, back up to the size that it needs to be.
I have another question. If it is database in middle of recovery, how we can go ahead and shrink? Whether we need to write a script for a shrink, or we can go ahead and write it. Anyway, we cannot do anything on the SSMS. We cannot right click and go to task manager and file system. We can say shrink because the database in pending status, middle of recovery. In that case, what do you need to do? If it is database is online, we can get rid of the virtual log file. We can shrink. We can get rid of it.
Right,
If it
right.
is middle of recovery, what do you need to do?
I didn't catch that last part of the question.
Database is middle of recovery. What we have to do? We cannot
Oh,
shrink it. Right?
wait. If it's in the middle of recovery, there's nothing you can do but wait, unfortunately.
Okay, I thought we use steps. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So once it comes online, then you can go about fixing it. But
So I need to tell to my customer is middle of recovery. How many virtual log files still yet to redo?
yes.
So how do I have to give some timeline when it will come up on to online my database. I can say that my client, my customer, hey, this is middle of recovery. We have to wait. So
Yeah, if you see, you can have
see
them
this
run
now.
dbcc log info,
Okay.
and that'll tell you how many virtual log files are in a database. So dbcc log info, and that's point to Stacy Awesome.
The reports brackets.
Put in quotes or brackets. Or parentheses. There we go. So I have 4 results. I only have 4 virtual log files in the transaction log for this database. That's not very many. That's okay.
If it is middle of recovery, right? Right now, your database is online. If in middle
Yes.
of recovery, I cannot even query the virtual log file, right?
Right.
So I want to tell my customer, I can go back and see that SQL error log, it will tell us it is 80% recovery, 30% it will keep on updating me. Some case I have seen, it's never do any work. It will stuck more than 2-3 hours. It will be stuck in 40, 60 percentages recovered. And after several hours, it will again come back. It is stating that 80% percent is completed. I want to tell my customer this database is middle of recovery. This will take so while. I need to give some 2 hours or
There's
three
no
hours.
way to know. There's no way to know, really. There might be a DMV, or if you do, you can guesstimate um, by looking in the SQL error log, and you can see what stage it's at, right?
Yeah.
You can get a rough estimate on how long it took last time, maybe, if the log files are still there. Let's see.
So what the same situation happened to me one of the production environment. It was I was waiting for a while. So I got pissed up and just went and say all the database said to bring online. The database came online quickly.
How long a database will be in recovery? I don't know these people. I know there is Stack Overflow. This is a good resource. You can look in the server logs. It will add an entry after every 1% of progress or so. Yes, but yeah, it's a guesstimate. You're not going to be able to say it's going to take 2 more hours or it's going to take 30 more minutes. Yeah, there's nothing for sure about that. Let's see. Tables, constraints, indexes. So if I look at my AdventureWorks, which everybody hopefully figured out how to attach an AdventureWorks database to their instance, this is a good one because it's already got data in here. And these are the tables. So when we talk about data in SQL Server, we're going to look at the tables because that's the way data is stored. Here I have movies, select top 1,000 rows, Gone with the Wind. It's the only book really that's worth reading. No, I'm kidding. But let's see, books. Select top 1,000 rows. Here's my books. But these tables are even more interesting because it's really normalized database, and you know, trying to figure out how all these relate and everything is very good exercise to do. So person, password, person, what does that mean? Okay, we have a business entity ID, a person type. I bet EM means employee. Their title, first name, middle name, last name. Okay. And some other stuff here, fancy stuff. So I have this business entity ID because this is an individual. There is a business entity ID for companies. Where is it at? Sales, customer ID, person ID. Okay, maybe it's not there. Territory. Where is this at? Purchase order. I know there's business entity ID somewhere else. Business. Wow, this is all I have in here. Business entity ID. Good. Entity address. Address ID. So this is really normalized. This address ID is associated with this address. What human does it go to? Well, that's what you got to figure out. It is mapped, but it just makes it interesting. Most of my stuff is not this, okay, normalized. But, all right, let's see. So back here. One of the things in our properties of our database is the recovery model. So in SQL Server, when we're talking about databases, we're talking about data that people don't want to lose. So this is your Bank of America's, your Amazon's. They store your account information in a database, and they want to be able to retrieve that information quickly, and they don't want to lose it. So if something happens to their server, whether it's a tornado or a malicious employee or a hacker, an accident, oh my God, I accidentally dropped that table. Okay, we need to be able to recover that data. And so one way to do that is to back up the data. There's different models. That's why we have these recovery models here. for your database backups. There's simple, there's full, and there's bulk logged. And each one is a little bit different depending on your needs. The simple recovery model means that I don't care about the transaction log. The transaction log will be cleared out at checkpoint, and we're not going to save it. If you use a simple recovery model, the only thing you can do is full database backups. And so however frequently you back up with a full database backup is, like if you do it once a day, then you can lose up to 24 hours worth of data. With the full recovery model, you're saying, I want to keep track of the transaction log. I want to back up the transaction log because I want to be able to restore to a certain point in time if necessary. Because the transaction log is a record of all the things that happen to the database. Every insert, every update, every delete is recorded in the transaction log. So if I do a full database backup at midnight and I'm doing a transaction log backup every 15 minutes and something happens to my database, I restore my full database backup and I restore all the transaction logs up to, as close as I can to my point of failure. And that way, I won't lose as much data. Does that make sense?
We can take tail log backups in the full recovery model.
You can take what?
And tail log backups in case
Tail.
of database. In
Tail
case
log,
of
yes.
database is suspect or something, we can take
Right.
tail log and we can recover that even if it is we are taking every 50 minutes once. We can do that. And additionally, I think we can able to take a differential backup on the simple recovery model.
Right. So let's say that we have our full backups that happen at midnight. We do transaction log backups every 15 minutes. And somebody accidentally drops a table at 2 o'clock. And now it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon before they realize they dropped that table. Well, what I can do is I will restore all my transaction logs, even the one that happened at 2 o'clock, even though they did the delete at 2 o'clock. I restore the transaction log that happened at 2 o'clock, and I can restore to a point in time. Now the tail log backup is when I'm in between my regularly scheduled transaction log backup. So I can tell it to do a tail log backup. It means back up everything you can up to this point, right? And that can help with, like you said, you've got corruption or something like that.
Yep.
Let's see. Okay, so the full backup is just like it sounds. It backs up everything in the MDF, okay? And it does just enough of the transaction log backup to do a full restore, okay? It does not, however, truncate the transaction log. So the way the transaction log works, and I used to have this pretty, let me see if it'll work. I'll probably have to reshare my screen. Okay, can you see the screen now?
Not it.
You do? Or no?
Nope. Nope.
I can see it.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So data is written. Okay, so things happen to the database, and data is written to the transaction log to record it, and then of course the actual modification occurs within the data itself. When we back up the transaction log, we take that data and we stick it in the transaction backup file. Okay. Well, actually, this graphic is not real good. What's supposed to happen is the data that we backed up in the transaction log goes away because it got backed up. So the transaction log, the data within it is constantly, it's like filling up and then being emptied out all day long. We're putting data in it. When we back it up, it's truncating the data out of the transaction log and putting it into the transaction log backup. Why did I say that? Oh yeah, it captures the inactive portion. So all the transactions that have completed. If there's any active transactions, the ones that are not done yet, it's in the middle of doing something, those stay in the transaction log file. Only the ones that are completed get backed up and stuck in the transaction log backup. So you can run into times when, if you're not backing up your transaction log frequently enough, you can fill up your transaction log. It'll auto grow until it uses all the disk space, and then it won't be able to allocate any more space, and it'll stop. All processing will stop. And that's when you need to update your resume. And we don't want to get to that point. So keep an eye on your transaction log, back it up frequently enough, and remember that a full database backup does not truncate the transaction log. And I'll just continue this way. If you have a whole bunch of transaction log backups, they do you no good unless you have a full backup associated with them. So the order is you do a full database backup, and then any differential or transaction log backups that happen after that full backup, that can be restored to that along with that full backup. Okay, so all of the differentials and transaction log backups that happen after the full backup are associated with that full backup. And until you do another full backup, then it kind of the thing resets, if you will. So the way we restore is we restore the full backup, and then we restore any subsequent differential or transaction log backups to the data. And it's more data each time being tacked on. So we want to back up our transaction log frequently. So however long in between your transaction log backups, you're basically saying that's how much data I can afford to lose. You want to set it up in like a maintenance plan, something that happens without you having to think about it. And there's a wizard to setting this up. It's very easy on a schedule. And it's going to make an entry in the SQL error log every time it succeeds or fails. So if you want to set up some alerting system or something to let you know when your backups fail, great. You can have it look in the error log, or you can go off of the SQL Server agent, and it will alert you if you set it up that way. We only have 3 more minutes. So I'm going to stop for questions.
Respect to bulk recovery model, right? I have too many confusions with the restoring whenever restoring backups. My environment, everything is full recovery model. We don't have any bulk recovery models. We have a simple and full recovery model. So whenever you're going interview, they're asking question. Um, well, the bulk recovery model, I know that theoretically it is kind of minimal log. Would you be able to explain what is happening in the bulk recovery model, how the data is storing, in case of something going wrong, how to recover data?
How can you explain the recovery model? Is that what you're asking?
The question is, what is the exact main difference between full and bulk recovery model? If possible, full recovery model, we can able to point in time recovery through the tail log backups. The bulk recovery model, right? Still, we can able to do, since we are taking a log backup, we can able to do the point in recovery and that log backup also in the full recovery, I mean bulk recovery model also. What is the exact difference? And,
The exact difference. So with bulk logged, well, with full recovery model, basically it's keeping track of each individual insert. Okay, so if you have an ETL and it has lots and lots of rows, it's going to keep track of each individual insert. This is how this was explained to me. However, with bulk logged, it's just going to record that bulk insert as one transaction.
Okay, the whole bulk transaction is going to one insert. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in case I'm doing some bulk activities, one batch of bulk is running right now. I'm very periodically I'm taking log backups every 50 minutes once. After a few minutes, customer coming and saying something missed, so we can able to restore it, right? Or we cannot restore.
Yes.
We can restore, right? So even the full recovery also we are recovering the complete information, and bulk recovery also we can restore the full recovery. So
yeah, you'll still recover. You still restore everything. So when you do a restore, it's still going to restore it, like the way it was when it's backed up. It's just the logging is different. So instead of each individual entry, which can create and make the transaction log grow.
Is the case, right? If that is the case, right? It is even though if I have a backup, full and T-log backup, I can able to recover completely what it was earlier. So the same thing for a full recovery model also, right?
Yes. It's just like if you say, well, I only want to restore or recover back to the middle of my bulk insert, you're not going to be able to do that with the bulk logged recovery model. You'll just be able to restore either before the bulk transaction or after. You won't be able to cut it in the middle like you would with the full recovery model.
Oh, okay. You mean the stop at like that? We are putting timing, right? You're talking about that way, right?
Well, you can still do point in time, but the bulk transaction is going to be, it's going to be all or nothing. You'll either restore all of it or none of it. It's not going to be able to have that,
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll be reporting that soon. Okay. Thank you. Hey, Tracy, quick question for my side. I would like to take a SQL Server 2016 DBA certification. Do you have any suggestion, or will you be able to help something for me to go through some
certification?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. No security. So if you're taking the administering SQL Server
Yes.
exam,
Yep.
know how to enable encryption in order, like the steps you would take in order to enable encryption, TDE. Know the default security groups that come with SQL, and you know what they allow people to do. So like the question will be something like, you have 2 users and you want them to be able to back up databases but not do these other things. You would place them in which built-in security group? Those kinds of questions. Let's see what else. There'll be backup and restore scenarios. There will be
Any article or documents?
Oh, it'll be stuff like, this is your backup methodology, this is your schedule, something happens at this time, what order do you need to do steps to get back to this, to this point in time or whatever. And so you'll have to indicate, which step you would do and put it in the proper order. Let's see, another thing is going to be questions like, you're given a scenario where they want to move data or they have some uptime requirements, and so you need to provide them with the best solution, whether it's replication, always on availability groups, failover cluster, database mirroring. What else? Oh, configuring a SQL Server, which additions to use. So like one of them might be they want to, they'll have all these requirements. There'll be a big old long list, and you'll have to refer back to it a bunch. They want to be able to run reports against a mirrored database. They want to be able to have several copies, one go to sales, one go to here. So, you would think about it and say, okay, always on availability groups would be the solution they would need because they have all these requirements. What else?
Is any kind of, if I buy any books, the book have all the information?
Books, sure. There's a book made especially for it. 473. I can't remember. Is it 70-473?
Okay.
Let me look. I could be wrong.
You never be wrong.
That's probably not going to come up. No, that's the wrong one. That's the last exam I took. Designing and implementing cloud data. Let's see. What is it for?
Do you have any dumps? Easy.
462.
Awesome.
So there's a book.
Okay. So do you
Just
have any
get it off of Amazon. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I can.
Or what is it? The used bookstore.
Okay. Okay.
Half price books. That's it.
Nice. Do you have any dumps?
No. What I did to pass it is I read the book, and of course I relied on my experience, hands-on experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I read the book, and then at the back of the book there's a DVD, and it has practice exams in it. The practice exams are a lot harder than the actual exam, I think. So if you can, I took the practice exam and I made like a 50 on it.
Okay.
And I went and took the exam and I made an 800 and something. So
Awesome.
yeah, that works.
How long it took to completely go to end to end?
You don't want to know, man, because I feel bad when I tell people. So I was putting it off, and I was putting it off, and I was putting it off, and then I was like, I was at Tech Ready, and I'm like, okay, I'm out of town. I should do this thing. They're offering it. It's free. So I studied the day before. Yeah, I know. Don't hate me, please. Um, my very first exam, though, I failed it twice. So if that makes you feel better.
So I've been in the industry for more than 10 years, and every time I plan to take exam, another version is coming. So okay, I can wait for. I used to wait for. Okay, we can take another exam. So it's going to be my minimum and this kind of pressure. So
just go do it. I mean, if you
okay.
fail, you get a little report that tells you where your gaps are.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's $150, but the fear of not knowing what to expect and everything can keep you from going. Just study a little bit and then go down and saying to yourself, I'm probably going to fail this exam. I'm probably going to fail, and that way you're not too disappointed. And then when you do, you can look at the little report afterwards and go, oh, okay, I need to brush up on my security. I need to brush up on this other area, and so just study up on that and then go take it again.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Stacy, this is Mike again. What do you recommend as the first certification to take if you're relatively new to SQL? What is a good gateway exam to take?
462.
Oh, the 7462?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because the T-SQL one, but this is, you're asking me my personal preference. Writing T-SQL is not my strongest area. Okay. So knowing the syntax of all that and everything, that's harder for me.
Okay.
Whereas I've been doing backups and restores and setting up users, and that stuff's just easier for me. But if your brain is more of the programmer type brain, I would say, then the 461 is going to be easier for you.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, because what I'm trying to do with this is I'd like to dovetail this into a SharePoint exam or a certification, because that's what my primary function at the bank is to do is I do SharePoint. So as I've been doing SharePoint over the last 5 to 7 years, SQL has always come into play,
Yeah.
in terms of me running reports and stuff like that. And I just wanted to make sure I had a good intro into SQL so I could get a certification that just gets me started. So
pick a version. Right now we have 3, 2013, 2016, and online.
Does it really matter? I mean, or is it better just to take the exam based on the stuff that I know, like on the version I'm currently on?
Well, I guess you probably want to take it on the version that you're working with, mostly, I suppose, and then as you're work towards upgrading, you might want to take the next one.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I would definitely take it on what you know, right? Not what you don't know.
Yeah, and what you're working with every day, that's going to make it a lot easier to.
Yeah, that's my main fear, is that if I get in to take one, I don't want to take something that's so old, and then I don't want to take something that's so new that I'm not familiar with the information. So I just want to make sure that I was in the right container as far as exam certification. So.
I don't think the version of the certification matters nearly as much as we imagine that it does. If you get certified in SharePoint, and whether it's 2013 or you got certified in SharePoint.
Yeah,
right?
and once you do that, it's like Stacy said, after you get down the way the test works and do a couple of practice exams, you'll be able to knock those out like home runs, all the different tests.
Is there a number that you recommend? I guess for me, I would take it for 2013. So what is the? Do you know what the exam number for that one is, or the certification is for that?
Oh, I can bang it.
Yeah, I'm just a sec here. Yeah.
Tracy, sorry for the confusion. Right now, we have a 2016, 17 is on the way for the SQL Server side. So can I go and take 2012 certification, or I can go and take 2016 certification?
You can take them whatever order you want to.
Oh. So after taking some time, right, I need to again upgrade it to 2016, right?
I took 2012. It's good for a while. I had my MCSE on NT40, so it's okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, then okay, I can take it within a week.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to go home. So, unless somebody has a real pressing question or something, I'm going to go ahead and end the session. That's okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All
Thank you
righty.
very much.
Y'all have a good weekend.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.